All right, everybody. Anybody that's watching, we're going to have a live real talk and hear some of my guests' story about his life into men's work. He's actually one of the founders, I guess you could say, so to speak. His name's David Lindgren. He's a practicing psychotherapist, coach with an MA in clinical psychology, so he actually knows what he's talking about. I graduated from the Family Institute, the Northwestern University, and Northwestern University and their strategic coach program. And how I came to know David is through, he is one of the founders, he is one of, what'd you put here? Became one of the Mankind Project's first leaders, and he's now leading his own organization called Path to Spirit Warrior. I know I screwed some of that up, David. Can you want to clarify any of that?
You did good. You're good, buddy.
Okay, cool. So tonight I want to talk about what is men's work, how you came into it, and we're going to do a little bit of live. We're going to do a live check-in between me and David as well. And for anybody that's watching, what a check-in is what emotions are going on in your life, what's happening in your life right now that could be impacting. Doesn't matter what it is. We all got 1,000 million thoughts up in our head, and we got emotions and feelings that are going through us, or we're feeling or not feeling, or not expressing. And I believe it's important to understand who we are and what's going on up here, as well as what's going on in our bodies. And David's an expert at this. He's been doing it for a long time. He's also looking very sexy tonight in his fireplace. This is going to be like a little fireside chat. So welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. And yeah, I got my little fireside chat, my comfortable little office room here. I thought I'd put the fireplace on just to have a little bit attention for COVID comfort.
Yeah. So for people watching, I met David in Chicago. You started, or one of the, I guess the initial founders of the Mankind Project way back in the early 80s. Is that correct?
I wasn't one of the actual founders. There were three founders, and there were three of us that came on a little bit afterward that kind of solidified it, and we got it into being an organization per se, and got a not-for-profit in Illinois, and we started writing the protocols for the training. There weren't any written protocols at that time.
Gotcha. Okay, so you were there in the very beginning days.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of men's work. You've led a lot of men through, the retreats and the initiation weekends, and most importantly, at least in my opinion, is leading them through guts work. And we'll go into that a little bit today, what that is and how important that is. But when I went through your program, Path to Spirit, that was a spiritual journey of myself. And the context there for me was my mom had just passed away a few months before. And I was still grieving and holding on to some emotions. And one of the things that happened on that weekend was I got to grieve and cry in front of a bunch of, awesome guys. And I went back to St. Louis after that weekend, and some of my friends that were in my men's group looked at me and they're like, "What happened to you this weekend? Like, you look a lot better." We don't know what happened, but something's different. And we're like, whatever that is, we want more of it. So I told them about your program. And so it helped change my life and help me understand something, that emotions should be processed and they're perfectly normal and fine. There are no good emotions, there are no bad emotions. They just are. Grief, sadness, happiness, all that stuff. So yeah, what I want to kind of, I want to ask you, how did you get into what you're doing? And where were you kind of back in the beginning days? Like, and for the people that are listening, like that have never done this, they might be in that fear state of like, I can't talk about my stuff. Like people are going to think I'm weird. They're going to think I'm whatever. But something magical happens when you do talk about it, right?
Yeah, I'll just share the magic that I was exposed to. That I had a therapy practice, and I had a number of men that would come through, and one by one, I sent them to the beginning stages of the New Warrior Training. It wasn't even called the New Warrior Training; it's called the Wild Man Adventure, and that was about the first 3 or 4 or 5 trainings they had. So I'm not going to go to it. I'm a therapist. I don't need that, So the 5th guy, who was, I won't say his name, but he was a dentist. And he went to the training and he came back and he said, David, I saw some miracles happen on this training. I think you need to do it just to learn it. So, okay. So I'm kind of going as a, kind of my own professorial sense of it. Not that I'm a professor, but I went to it and I was ready, but highly defended. So I came
Highly defensive. Is that what you said?
highly defended. I'm defending my own sense of self. So,
Okay.
but I got there and there was this whole process, and I have a background in terms of competition and athletics and stuff. So like they're firing at you, not to tell you what happens there, but this is back in 87.
87.
So there was a lot of fiery stuff, very fiery stuff. Anyway, so we went through all that stuff. When we got to this place on the 2nd day of the training, where men are asked to drop into a very scary place that is called the guts training. I'm not even sure it was called guts then. I think it was, but anyway. And men were doing this, and I held off. And I'm watching because I'm a therapist, so I watch a lot. I listen a lot. To do what I was going to do. So I finally went through it. It took a long time to do my work.
Yeah.
And Ron Herring, who was one of the founders, there was something he found in me that he went with, and he stuck with me the whole thing. And we got through it. And I had to run through a gauntlet of stuff, and I got stuff off my chest. But here was the point. I'm sure I had tears. I can't remember exactly what it was, but because I'm kind of into knowing the origins of primal scream therapy. So screaming was okay. So, but when I got through it, about a couple hours afterward, I just stood there and I could see my whole life transforming in front of my eyes. I couldn't see what it was, but I knew it was my life. And so I knew it was a magical moment that I then could say, wow, this is part of my life. I've got to do this. I've got to stay with it. I've got to bring this to other men. So that was the beginning for me.
So was something was released or let go of in that moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was, Brad, that I'm struggling with that today to remember it because it's 37 years or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
I think it was letting go of my grandfather.
He had just passed or something?
Well, no, it was a memory that I had a pretty mild childhood, and I didn't have any real out and out traumas that were imposed on me. I created some problems for people. In school, I'd get sent to the principal or something, but my grandfather was there for my maternal grandfather, and he would play baseball with me, and he'd take me on walks. And the point was, I wasn't prone to get into any kind of sad place. But then I thought about when he died. I was 18 years old. It was a couple days before my high school graduation. And my grandfather, who lived right next door on the farm where I lived, my mom got up in the night when my grandmother called her and went over because he had passed. He was about 85 or something. And it turned out that my watch stopped at the exact moment that he died. There was a connection that my grandfather and I had. And I think I found that was really important loss that I had, because here I'm finishing high school. I had a football scholarship to go to college, but I didn't know what was ahead of me at all. So it was kind of scary for me. And I think that's what it was about. I was lost. I just, and I've had to deal with other losses in my life, but that was one I had to own, that I really lost something very vital to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't. I mean, you could go into like the whole psychology behind it, but I don't. I think it gets repressed, right?
Pardon?
It gets, those memories or those feelings get repressed.
Repressed. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I think the thinking around it is that at early ages, and it could start even when you're born, that there's a gate that you put up that it's too much and you shut it down. And then you go on and you get another gate up and you put it down. It's called repression.
Yeah.
And the emotions get blocked and they stay inside. And that shows up in adulthood now. That I saw a thing today on the incidence of mental illness, manic depressive or bipolar, more repressed emotional stuff that people go through, but it is repression is the big deal. That's
Yeah. So you spent, a large portion within the Mankind Project,
right.
right?
Right.
And can you share your perspective of I guess basically for people watching, like, first, what is men's work? I mean, we kind of went into a little bit of this of your story there, but first, what is men's work, and then what is the Mankind Project, and then I'd like to talk about your organization too.
Well, I can give a stab at this. There's a lot more profound people that have written on this, but I think in the 70s, the 80s, feminism in the early 80s was coming to the forefront. Gloria Steinem, others who were bringing up that women, they needed to own their own power. And that perhaps men were too patriarchally inclined to control things, whatever. But then men were left like, we didn't have how do we look at our own sense of self as a man? And stuff was written on initiatory rites of passage, particularly in Africa or more primitive cultures, where the idea of that is the father figures of the community would take the boy away from the mother into the wilderness and teach him what it's like to be a man. And they would knock a tooth out, or they'd give them some injury or something they remember in their body what it was about. And it was about taking charge of your life as a man, beginning to be a man, So you're done being a boy. Now you've got to look at manhood. So that was the whole business around getting the warrior thing going. I think the three founders, they really coalesced and came together to realize that was needed. I think little did they know. I've seen the interviews with them, and little did they know, in a sense, what they were getting into. But yeah, and I think let's take a fast forward to today too, because men's work is needed, and it's to understand what true masculinity is. It's to understand the masculine side of the self, the new warrior. It's not the warrior that's a killer or anything. It's the man who takes responsibility for his life and his emotional life and his relationships. And that's what got our Path to Spirit thing going. It was about relationships. But yeah, that's how do men do that? And there's a lot of men out there, you can tell in the political climate of the day, they're truly unconscious.
Yeah.
And the men's work is to become conscious, is to become consciously competent. When we start the training, you're kind of looked upon as being unconsciously incompetent. And during the training, you become consciously incompetent. So you know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're introduced to knowing what you didn't know. So as a result of that, then you get into your life and you become consciously competent. You take charge of your life, you take responsibility, and you start moving toward developing a sense of mission in life. So you're not just wandering around in the wilderness. Because a lot of us, a lot of men are wandering around in the wilderness, and men come to our trainings and, they could be successful in business, but they're still lost. and their partners might not want them around, or their children are not being treated properly, or there's a great deep need, great need for trainings for men.
Yeah. I mean, it has made a huge impact on my life just to be able to talk about what's going on in my life, talk about my emotions, talk about, my feelings, talk about how much I think too much instead of feel, and it's an expressive like outlet, and also a place I believe too where a lot of times men miss that camaraderie,
Yeah.
and place where you can just be a guy, not to just to be like your natural self,
Yeah, a lot of young men grow up being bullied, or they're taught maybe early to be a really nice little sweet little boy, and they can't face challenges and step into their power and something like that, so yeah, I do think that there's just a lot of unfinished business that goes on. And what you talked about, connectivity, to come on a training, typically the training has got anywhere from low 20s to high mid 30s or whatever men on the training, and you got a double that number of men that are on staff, which is amazing. And
Yeah.
so you're exposed, and all the stuff about you feel less than if you're working in a company, or you felt less than in your academic life, or you feel less than in your marriage or whatever, it's exposed.
So we were just talking about this right before we went live. One of the things that you do in men's work is you do a check-in.
Okay.
And you said right before this, like, should we do a check-in? And I was like, I think it'd be a fun idea to do it live and just talk about it and actually give a demonstration of it. So there's different styles, in doing this, but my understanding, please add what you want, is basically you share what's going on in your life right now, what you're feeling, what those dominant feelings are, where they are in your body. And I don't know, sometimes people add in news in their life or something like that. Is there anything else, or what's the format that you like? And then where am I?
I think that's pretty good. I think, yeah, but what's the truth about me right now, given what you just said? I think that's, and what am I present with? That's the main emotional feelings and stuff, and what's blocking me or whatever, so.
Yeah. All right. You want to lead me?
You want me to lead?
Well, you want me to just check in right now?
You can do it, or yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So my name's Brad. And let's see. So I'm checking in with a joy and excitement. Some of it's up here in my head, and there's also a little bit of like maybe fear around my chest area, and that seems to be like, I want to get this right. I don't want to screw up. And then there's also a little bubbling of like, I hope someone watches this and gets something for themselves, and it makes a difference for them, Yeah. Yep. That's my check-in.
Good. I hear it. Well, here's what we do in our work too about pets, is reflective listening.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, introduce that first, that a lot of men don't listen.
What?
Act. Yeah, right. So, because I really believe that the real basic thing that men want is freedom. They want to be free to be themselves, and that's to be expressive. And so, one of the things a lot of men don't get taught is to really truly listen to their partners or anybody else. So I didn't hear anything you said. No, I'm kidding. But, Now, what I sensed with you in doing this too, the joy, you said, and excitement you have, you can feel the joy.
Yeah.
And you feel you can share it with that stuff. But then you said you can get in your head real quick too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is kind of like that my joy needs to get translated into productivity or something. You didn't say that, but I kind of get that.
No.
Yes, no?
I mean, what I was sharing is I was actually, I think understanding for the first time, like sometimes the joy is up here.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Like excited, but I'm thinking through things.
Well, the thing is about the kind of the 5 feeling states is that joy is a whole brain thing. So that's, what you're talking about. It's kind of a whole brain. And then you talk about fear in your chest, that, and then also, but chest is a place for sad. So you got to think about that. The gut is more for anger. The chest and lungs are more for sad. We hold in sadness in our lungs. So, and the big thing is that you say you don't want to screw things up.
Got to get it right.
You don't want to do that. So, and you want to pass on what you've learned to others. It's a big part of your mission, I suspect. You really are passionate about passing on what you're learning to others.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a difference when someone sees something for themselves.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh my God, I don't have to live like that anymore, or whatever it is. I mean, it's not always really super profound or something. But yeah, it makes a difference, and I like it.
That's good.
So what about you? What's your check-in?
Oh, you want me to check in? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You ain't getting away with this.
Very vulnerable on being interviewed here and have to check in. I going through the COVID thing and the transition of all this, I'm stuck at home a lot. I can't see clients in my office. It's all on the internet. So I'm kind of stuck here. It's nice. Oh my God. But my wife, we're here, and part of what I have some anger. And I have anger about, I'm not a conservative political person at all, but there's this whole thing about being contained, and the warrior in me wants to be able to take risks. And I feel I can't take risks. And I get told by everybody, no, Dave, you can't do that. Part of my whole thing was angry was I wanted schools to open up, because I really feel for young kids who are stymied by being at home, and parents who have to work. And it's, that's to me, the biggest thing out there now is to open up the schools and get that going. Yeah. So I've had, and then I've got into some anger with some on the other political party scheme from me, some too. And I think during the whole thing, a sense of loss too. I've been not willing to admit my sadness about things. I can quickly go to being more assertive and all that, and find things to channel my warrior in. But I think some sadness, just I'm getting older. I get wondering what am I going to be able to contribute. I want to continue contributing. That's really important. So yeah. So that's it. I think the kind of anger, sad thing. Early years, maybe some shame. Everybody has some sense of shame, but I don't hang out with that really at all. So yeah. That's it. But joy, I get a lot of joy from interacting in a way that's meaningful in a group or whatever. It's just profound. It's wonderful. And my kids, here's the other loss. My kids, I have 2. They're older. They're both doctors, and they're out west with grandkids and stuff. I haven't been able to see them. So there's some loss there and sadness.
Okay. So I'll reflect that back. There's some like bubbling anger, and maybe even a little bit, you want to do something kind of maybe suppressed around expressing, to do something about bringing kids back into school because of COVID, right? Also the sadness of just the whole situation, and it's really out of all of our control. But there's an impact there too with not being able to see your kids, not being able to see your clients. You can still see your clients virtually, but I know it's not the same as in person. It's pretty good on Zoom. I mean, but it's not the same when you can really open up to someone, in person. So, yeah, that's what I heard. Is
Yeah.
that you?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Um,
Feel free.
and yeah, me too. And I think that's the magic right there. Like when someone feels heard and understood, like we've gone through this process and we know like the flow of it. But when someone new gets to share and express something that they've been holding on to for a long time, man, it's like, oh my God, I feel seen. And then they let go of whatever, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that some of the statistics coming out that about men, say 40 some and older, about 47% of men see getting into therapy or even like doing like men's work as giving in or useless type thing, that they don't need to do that. So it's a good percent of men who likely to be able to do that. But, having really highly developed good relationships, it probably follows the sine curve, like intelligence, average, high functioning up there. But, no more than 25% of people are really satisfied with their lives. Not even maybe that many. People are struggling. And I do think today in particular, I think I think what's ahead of us too, by the way. I think what's ahead of us is we think we've really gone through a lot. I think there's some big stages ahead of us in our country and for men to work on. And I want to, you and I talked before, and I want to just mention this other thing too about the sensitivity toward the growing up of boys, developing boys to men project and stuff like that. And men that people don't know what the word misandry means. And I asked you the other day and you didn't know.
No.
And I would say 80-90% of the population out there, people listening to this, don't know what the word misandry means. So misandry is the opposite in a way of what misogyny. Misogyny would be the anger or hatred of women in some way. And misandry is the anger and hatred of men.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of that in our world today. The feminism, Gaia principle, whatever, is taken over, and there's more feminization of things that are going on. And that's just the nature of it, what's going on. But in the process, a lot of boys are left behind in school. Their achievement levels are measured lower. There's less boys going to college than girls. There's now, I even think in law school or medical school, there's less boys, young men, so I think, the advantage Title IX for girls and whatever, it's all good stuff, but we got to catch up with the guy stuff too. That this is really needed, that men, undifferentiated, uninitiated men are struggling. And I find the men that have gone through the men's work and stuff like that, I check in with them during COVID, they're doing pretty well. They're doing pretty well. It's kind of amazing.
You think that's because they have the awareness of what's happening for them?
Oh, they're awake.
Yeah.
They're more awake. They're aware. If they go through something, they can kind of figure it out. They're not lost. But here's the other thing too, is that suicide levels have gone way up. That's increasing. And young men.
Yeah.
It's mostly the higher percent of men committing suicide than women. Okay. That's what's going on. So, and also with younger men. So they may not feel like they've got a chance anymore right now at that developmental stage, So there's a lot to look out for, I think, in a way. So.
I'm going to kind of rephrase that, and I want to just share from my perspective what I think you're saying is that, or maybe even distill it, that a lot of young men and boys now haven't really been introduced or have a a figure of what like masculine energy is,
Yeah.
and not negative masculine energy, not like one that causes detriment or harm, but one that is compassionate and driven and is for a purpose.
The question really relates to what you're saying is, did you have a mentor when you were younger? Who did you consider a mentor?
Well, I guess you could say my dad, but I mean, he passed away when I was 18.
Well,
And those are pretty,
significant loss.
yeah.
You talk about being teary-eyed about that's losing your dad at 18. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And as I told you about my grandfather lost when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I considered my grandfather a mentor of mine. You considered perhaps your dad a mentor of yours.
Yeah.
I had coaches. I don't know, they were always great coaches, but I had a lot of coaches in all the sports I was in up into college and into college. So, you know, I had some sense of a modeling of masculinity and somebody there in some way. Although I didn't really pick up on it until later.
Yeah.
I just kind of dismissed it as just, oh, it's just a coach or something, you know. But I think a lot of young men are floundering and they're lost and they don't have somebody to look out. And in minority communities too, a lot of their fatherless boys, their father divorced, you know, mothers are raising them.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that has an enormous effect. Enormous effect. Now, the boys that can really work through that and they can find their wounding and how they're going to define themselves are way ahead of the game. But, you know, not having a mentor. And I do think later on, too, a lot of us in life, if you want to be a leader, you want to be a mentor to others, you need to have a mentor. That's why having men's groups is good. That's why the whole recovery movement about AA and that was so successful, because they would everybody get together and you weren't alone. You had a sponsor, or you had somebody that was there for you.
I would say when you were asking that question, my mind went to, like, I guess initially my dad was, but I think in a sense I looked up to, you know, one of my older brothers as well.
Yeah.
And that was probably a mentor. And now I think that's probably still true, but I've also come to know, you know, men like you, other men in the Mankind Project. I have a good friend, Richard, that I look up to. And I guess I haven't labeled it a mentor, but in a lot of respects, they have been, you know, as I've grown and been more intentional of taking on.
I think it's real hard to even go through that process of who do I look up to?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of that's the path of spirit thing, spiritual thing. What do you look up to? What, you know, who can personify some of that spiritual nature that they have that you can get in some way. But I think it's hard. It's difficult to find people that you can look up to. You kind of have to go through something with them to have to prove that they're there for you, you know, in some way, you know. So, but I think that's where COVID's been a problem too. I mean, it being able to, you know, be there for others. It's difficult to do that. So.
Yeah, this whole thing's brought up a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I want to lead the conversation into what you started, you know, Path to Spirit.
Yeah.
How did that get started? And one, what is it? And then why did you create that?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a spinoff of the New Warrior Training Adventure. So the New Warrior Training Adventure is more on self-development. It's really a doorway to have a healthy ego structure, understanding yourself and who you are in the relationship to the world and dealing with challenges, and ultimately develop a mission. So what happened for me was that I found out that what I was concerned about, the mission, where do you get your mission? So that took me on this whole process. I thought, well, it wasn't something I concocted. It wasn't something I got as a child or from anybody. It was gifted to me. It's spiritually, in a sense, that I needed to understand my own spiritual nature.
And when you say mission, what do you mean? You
Mission.
know, like a mission trip? You know, I'm giving you a softball here.
Well, mission, yeah, that in the warrior work, they talk about developing a mission, and but it was kind of loose, and it was kind of not, where do you get it? That was my question.
Yeah.
I won't get into their whole story about how they do that, but that was my real issue, is that I felt that your real mission in life came from spirit, that we were brought onto this planet. We're here for a reason. We're here, you know, we've evolved however we get here. But if you I look at my babies, my children when they're born, there was a person there almost. They were amazing, right? Coming out of the womb. I mean, they're right there. They were like unbelievable. I could tell.
Yeah.
You know, I was being introduced to somebody, you know. So they've come from somewhere, wherever that is. And I think in our spiritual work, we've kind of dug into that about, you know, where does our own sense of spirituality come from? A lot of people in religions don't necessarily have any kind of spiritual direction. A lot of them do, but some don't. You could be religious but not spiritual, spiritual but not religious. You know, there's a book written on that, Spiritual but Not Religious. And there's a high percentage of people in this country now that are very spiritual but not religious. So that was the whole thing about that. And then we started doing it. And then what came out of it was this, that the mission that you have in life emanated from the gifts. You can trace them down, how they came out in your life. And it usually came out through a challenge of some kind, a warrior-like thing, that where your life is on the line, your relationships are on the line, your reputation's on the line, something's on the line. Yeah. And what was the gift that you had that got you through that and you could rely on? So that became part of the mission statement. My mission is, I'll tell you mine. My mission is that I care enough to challenge myself and others to be spiritually awake and living missions of love and service. And the last part's kind of flowery in the sense, but the main part is the challenge. Yeah. Challenge myself. And it emanated out of my childhood and other. I went through a very painful divorce early on. And I was challenged. And like my life was on the line. Yeah. And I found that I could live my challenge out. That gave me purpose in life. That gave me, I'm alive when I'm in a challenge, when I'm challenged. And then I learned to challenge others. So that became my mission. That, you know, if you have a mission and you can identify it, you then know who you are on a daily basis. You know when stuff comes up, I'm on mission. I'm on mission doing what I'm here to do. I'm what I'm called to do. You don't have to wander around so much. It makes it gives, the gift is purpose. Yeah, right. You know? Yeah, and that's about masculinity too, having purpose, direction, some, you know, consciousness about your intentionality of what you're doing and not unconsciously lost adrift. Yeah. It's once you discover it for yourself, it's really impactful because then it just creates this force in which you can have a direction in your life. Yeah. I just sense that when men get it, that, you know, they can continue doing group work and all that, but that they found themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, once you've got your mission and you can live it, it's not completion. It's just, you know, you're on your way. Yeah, you're not floundering anymore. Yeah, exactly. Like, put me back in the ocean. I know where to go now. Yeah. So how, you know, what is Path to Spirit? And yeah. I have an understanding, but it's probably not. Okay, I'll just give you a stab what we've been doing for about 25 years we've been doing. 26 now. Wow. It's a training, a 3-day weekend training whereby the whole notion is to take graduates mostly of the warrior training to embellish their warrior thing, to take it into relationships in your life. So the spirit part is self and other. That other is spirit in a sense, and that gets manifested in other people. So if you can connect up with other people at a deeper level, that's one of the great intentions of the work. So what we test on the weekend is that, where are the dilemmas in your life? I'll tell you, the definition of a dilemma is a present and persistent conflict that has an emotional charge with another person with a lose-lose outcome. That's kind of long, but the point of it is that people get into dilemmas in relationships.
Yeah.
Now, you ask most men, you had dilemmas in your relationship, and anybody doesn't raise their hand, they're lying.
Never, ever.
That's
never.
not true. They're
Mine
lying.
have all gone perfectly 100% of the time.
So, we deal with that, and we deal with how what we've learned gets manifested in the breakdown of a relationship.
Yeah.
And then how the rest of that is how to recover from that and re-experience the emotions that you have that keeps you from being connected in a deeper relationship. And we have a process that we do with that that's pretty, as you know, very lengthy, and it's very involved, and it's very passionate, and it's very loving. And that's the part about, I think, the training here, the warrior training, I think ultimately is very loving in a sense, but that's not part of the warrior experience, which is really it's harder.
Yeah.
Ours is very loving.
I was going to say, I experienced the Mankind Project is starting to bring and wake men up into taking accountability for their life.
Well, it wakes them up and it breaks them. It breaks them away from the unconscious repression that's been holding on to them. So That's the beautiful part. They've been broken. And, to know you've been broken and you can deal with it is just life affirming. If you think you're just going along, no, bam, no, that's not going to work. You got to wake up.
Yeah. I think
the warrior training is waking men up.
I think, at least what I've witnessed and what I think woke a lot of guys up, I think this was my part too, was that moment when they reenact like a boy breaking away from his father. When he used to look up to his father for just playing and having a good time or, whatever. And then there's a moment where something happens and there's like this separation and the boy kind of feels isolated.
Yeah.
And I remember watching these guys, these two guys, react this out. One was a boy and one was a father. And just, men just like getting for the first time in their life, like, oh my God, like that's what's been missing in my life. Or whatever it was. And like, there's just a huge impact there for these guys.
They're coming together, but typically there's a fracture in the father-son relationship at some level. And many men talk about the conflict they had with their father back in that generation.
Yeah.
Younger, the fathers weren't listening. They were just out industrial age type thing, working, and they weren't really emotionally connecting. And I think I had some missing connections to my dad, but I didn't have any profound dilemmas with him since until later. And I know my son, Peter's going to watch this interview here someday over here, but
I'm so sorry, Peter.
That I brought him to the warrior training when he was 17.
Oh, wow.
And what was the work he had to do? Me.
Oh, yeah.
My problem with my dad. So I'm on the staff, and I'm kind of sort of semi at that time. It was my third or fourth training. I was kind of semi co-leading at that level. And they pulled me off up in the area away from it. And they said, well, get him down here. Get your dad down here. And Peter said, Dad, come on down. They said, and I didn't respond. They said, pull back. So he was yelling and demanding that I come down to do the work with him. And that got him going. That got Peter going because, he was 5 when we got divorced. And even though he'd been living with me, there was a sense of loss
Oh, yeah.
that I wasn't there for him. So to get me down there, and that he was his work with me, and it was his anger with me, now that I wasn't there, and that was really painful and terrifying for me because I didn't want to have done that to him.
Oh, yeah.
But I did, so Peter did some great work. And here's the other thing. If Peter watches this too, Peter he's a pediatrician now. And he told me the story one day about how he's working with his family and how he was interviewing and processing through this thing for this boy and his family and the whole thing. I said, Peter, that's amazing. Where did you learn that? He said, Dad, where do you think? So that was like, right back the training and some more staff as we did. It was like one of the most, beautiful experiences I had for him, waking me up, like, wow, it was amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to lead this into the path of spirit. So the mankind, the mankind, kind of, creates that accountability and helps men understand some things at a fundamental level. And yours in the path to spirit takes, I guess you could say, the next step, where it's like, hey, you've uncovered some things. Now let's talk about where to lead your spirit. And you were talking about the dilemma. And I remember, I think when you were describing it on the weekend, it was kind of like, you feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
It's a lose-lose.
Yeah, lose-lose. And mine was about a woman. So
that's kind of where we start.
How I feel.
That's kind of where the whole depth of it starts on the weekend. So we go from there. And I'm noticing that you're frozen right now on the screen. I'm probably frozen to you too around the screen. So not sure where we're at here. So I'll talk on about this, that you've asked me to do this, so we can get this worked out here. That in effect, you're back.
Yep, now I'm back. Did I freeze up on you?
It was frozen for a bit. Yeah. Was I frozen?
No. You froze on my end, but whichever. We're
So,
going with it.
So it's to get men conscious then about who they are in relationship to somebody else, usually a primary relationship. And that could be, usually when we do it, it's not about dad or mom or teachers in school. It's usually about their partners in life or people that are really important to them in their life now.
Yeah.
How does it play out now? So that's what we work on. And many of it is in terms of our own, our committed marriage relationships or however it is that you're in a relationship, whatever. So that gets played out as to what the lose-lose outcome is, of the relationship. And out of that, you get to look at their old strategy that doesn't work. We call it a burden. The strategy you've been using over, and people do this, you'll learn it over and over and over and over again. And it becomes the standard strategy in your life, but it doesn't work. It doesn't connect with people. It pushes them.
It works for a period of time in their life.
Yeah.
And it stops working.
Yes,
like doesn't our psyche create it fixes something, or it says do this and then this will get fixed.
Yeah.
But we take that on, and then we take that through the rest of our life, and we expect it to still resolve something.
You hit a new developmental cycle where you've got to change. It's not going to work anymore. So that's what they get exposed to, that it's not working, and you get triggered, and that gets the burden going again. So out of this, in trusting spirit, the idea is to develop a new strategies in life, so that you're reborn spiritually as a warrior. I mean, you go through a new transcendent experience, in effect, that you learn to trust something greater than yourself. That to do this. That's the point of spirit, trusting something greater than yourself. That comes out in the whole AA thing, recovery stuff, 12 step, that, the first thing is to recognize what your problem is, like a dilemma. And then, if you will, the second thing is trusting there's a higher power. And the third is turning your life over to higher power. That's recovery work. So we don't say it that way, but it's kind of like that in a way, because once you can trust this transcendent part, what is your spiritual calling? What's your spirit message to yourself?
Yeah.
Then you can trust that. That can transcend anything you're coming into, you know. So that's our goal with it. That you develop new strategies by trusting something greater than yourself.
It's pretty cool and profound. I mean, I left from that weekend like a whole bag of rocks that was on my shoulders that I didn't know existed.
Literally.
You know? And it also unearthed to share mine. Like, I don't want to get into everything and rehash it, but basically, fundamentally, the dilemma, you know, I had was with a woman, and I felt loved but not wanted, and that's what we distilled down on that weekend.
Yeah.
And I remember I was trying to figure it out because I'm a coach and I was listening.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was like, I think I need to just be in the moment here. And then when I think you were facilitating one part of it, and then you looked at me and you go, so which one's your dad and which one's your mom? Like, as the reenactment of what the scenario that was being created. And that's when I was like, oh shit, fuck, you got me. And my ego is like, aha, like, damn it, I can't hide it anymore. And what I got was a fundamental feeling I've had my whole life of feeling loved and appreciated, but never like wanted, like you're mine. Like, and what I got that weekend was that my dad was 44, I think, when he had me, and he already had 3 kids.
Wow.
And I was older, or I mean, I was young. I was the younger, so there's 7 years difference between me and my brother.
You're the youngest.
Say again.
Were you the youngest?
Yeah. So I put myself in my father's shoes for the first time, thinking, what would I think if I was 44? I was working at McDonnell Douglas, you know, probably not struggling, but just barely enough money to feed my kids and family. And then I find out my wife's pregnant. I would probably be like, oh, I don't want that kid. Oh, we're just having fun that night, you know? And then I thought about it from my mom's perspective, and my mom's perspective of like, what's another one? I came from a family of 13. Who cares? Like,
wow.
we're gonna love them anyways, you know? And so I got to see the 2 fundamental aspects of myself. Like, oh my God, this is why all of my relationships, I've had this dilemma of like, I feel really liked, but I don't really, you know, and loved and appreciated, but I don't really feel wanted. And it's like, this is why so many things have manifested like this, you know? And I think my mission has been to really stand up for myself in the wanting, you know? I got the love part down.
That's it. That is the key now for you too. Standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
Do I need to feel wanted? Do I have to be told I'm wanted first, or can I want myself first? In other words, can I stand up for myself? Can I get what I want to get? What do I want?
Yeah.
And you know, they, not that they want me first, but that I want me too. That's the strategy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we can all feel rejected and not wanted at some point. That's just natural part of being human. So
yeah, it was, I think my story was that it was more of a fundamental aspect, and that's how it played out. Not that there's other people not like me or I'm the only one, because that's not the case at all. But I think that was the common thread through my life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, this has been great. But so I want you to share about the Path to Spirit with it now. I guess maybe even anything else you really want to share about it, and then we'll kind of start to wrap up.
No, I think we can check on the website to get people interested in it. You can give information at the end about how to contact us. That's kind of a way. No, I think the upshot is that, you know, is the claiming about a new step in your life, about being in relationship, what that means to be in a committed relationship, or, you know, whatever it is, but our relationships to have meaning and all that. So that we're not just defined by our own static individual nature, we're defined by how we relate to others in some way. And that's the whole, I think, upshot of Path to Spirit. The men that come back and staff it over, and that they feel so loved and cared for in the group. You know, that I think that's another interesting thing to, you know, have be loved and cared for by other men in a relationship. I'm watching the Super Bowl yesterday, and I watched Tom Brady and Gronkowski, the tight end. They looked at each other. They had such devotion and camaraderie and love for each other. It was wonderful, you know, that they had come together to make this thing happen. You know, and then he's with his kids. And Brady is the GOAT. He's the top quarterback, whatever. But if you watch him yesterday with his children, you know, the manifestation of with his kids and his wife, I mean, it's unbelievable that there's that warmth and love and generativity that emanates out of that whole thing. Now, that's what we want in life. We want to give it and we want to receive it.
I think it's because he's a vegan.
That's Path to Spirit. What?
I think it's because he's a vegan.
What?
It's because he's a vegan. It's all the vegetables. Love and compassion starts with vegetables.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but yeah, I think when it gets to be, when you get to see it in the world as an example, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And there's just not I mean, media today is just full of drama because that's what the ego wants. And it's just so attractive to the ego, right? And it just keeps us baited in and, like, you know, sinks our teeth into it. And next thing you know, we're 4 hours into CNN or Fox News or whatever. And then we're watching the movie with everybody killing somebody and blah, 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 blah. And that's the example we live from. But when you get to see something, you know, like on Path to Spirit Weekend, or, you know, what you're just describing, like, there's something real and a knowing there of, like, that's what there's a depth there.
The Path to Spirit warrior training and the new warrior training are dormant right now. They're not, you know, there's no live, you know, interaction going on. There's a lot of group stuff going on. There's a lot of internet stuff going on like this in a way, you know, too. So, but I just want to say that in terms of the Mankind Project that's going on, you know, that when it became the Mankind Project, it's got a lot of really strong organization to it.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many men have been through. There was a goal at one point of 1 million men to get through. Now that hasn't happened. But they felt that if you could get 1 million men through, that would have a dramatic impact in society. But I think there's probably 80,000 or something. I think in Chicago, it was, you know, I don't know, approaching 8,000, 9,000. I'm not sure what it was in Chicago, but a huge number, huge. And I was the first director of the program in Chicago. So I was there to watch this happening. Path to Spirit is just another step of the warrior work. And I think the men that do it get a tremendous amount out of it. And they evolve themselves in another level. So.
Yeah. My biggest thing I've taken away is now I've got a community of people that I can talk real to.
Yeah.
And it's addictive once you, in a good way, because now there's substance and something that I can actually talk about the real things that are going on in my life, instead of, like, you know, water cooler talk and the sports and the weather and, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't care about that, you know? It's like, I want to talk about what's actually happening, what's holding you back, like what's moving you, like what's not moving you.
That connectedness that we have is wonderful. And then we get to the outside world and it goes like this. We're trying to connect, and there's people out in the outside world who are not available. So there's a lot of that going on in this world right now. There's people that have got their shit together, and there's people that are not, they don't care. They're just into themselves or something, okay? Kind of in some narcissistic place. And that's the status of what's going on. And the more men we can encourage to get into the work and be part of the community that's evolved and developed. And there's other spinoffs of stuff too that's gone on. The project and other other organizations too, Victors of the Heart and some other groups that, they're doing some good work.
Yep. So I know you're not, like you're not doing any trainings right now because of COVID. But, where can people go find your work? And, if they want to contact you, what would be the best way?
The website is one start, which is path, the four words, path2spiritwarrior.com. Path2spiritwarrior.com. That'll get you up on the website. The other one about mine, can I say my
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. My email
America.
My email address is man, which stood for Mentors Action Network, by the way, not me as a man. Man, lowercase, man, David L. at AOL.com, because I'm an old world technical guy.
Yeah.
Man, David L. at AOL.com. And I'd love to pass on some stuff and distribute, information.
Okay.
We've got to do that. So.
Yeah. So if you're watching or listening and you want to reach out, path2spiritwarrior.com, or there is this email thing at this old company called AOL.
Yeah.
This gives Dave his significance.
I'm an old world guy. So.
Man David L at AOL.com
Yes.
is his email address. And I can, you've been a great support, for me throughout the last several years after my mom's passing, and it's been incredible. And I really appreciate all the, just, being there for another guy when they've got crap to deal with, or understand. And yeah, appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you and you're bringing this together. Thank you for inviting me. And the loss of parents, I've lost mine. Mine were 98, 97 when they passed. But I miss them.
Yeah.
Miss them too. I think what we're talking about is this sense of loss. We have to be open about that. But we've gone through some sense of loss.
Yeah. Once you acknowledge it, you can let it go.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of letting go, we're gonna say goodbye.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Bless you for what you're doing here. This is continue on and invite more people onto your podcast. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna stop now, and then we'll talk after this.
Okay, great. Thank you.